been enjoying making other content more and trying to figure out like how to make more reading vlogs or like vlogs about daily life. Those have been really fun for me, but I thought I should maybe do a wrap up of my June and July reads, kind of tell you guys what I thought of what I read over the majority of the summer before I leave and visit Canada for like 3 weeks. So very excited for that, but I'm still going to try and have videos come out as I'm gone, but I am just so excited for that trip, and I'm just kind of been prepping to go visit like my family and friends, and I'm just very excited to see everyone. But I still wanted to wrap up June and July, and I won't get too into July. I feel like my Emily Henry vlog kind of covers what I read in July. It was mostly just Emily Henry, but I'm still gonna go into all the other books I read and all the things that managed to make it onto my book bucket list that I am still going to try and do this year, probably the next year too. But anyway, there were a few things. I find romantic comedies, romance books tend to have a lot of things in them that I want to do, and not necessarily with someone else. They just have really good ideas for really fun, unique things you can go do that you've never done before. So I'm gonna share the books and the book bucket list items if they have them. Okay, so in the month of June, I read, let's see, TBR, okay. Actually, I feel like June, I kind of forget a little bit about what I read just because I was actually in Italy visiting my brother. This summer has been one of the best summers of my life, I'm not going to lie. I'm so grateful for all the things that I get to go do and I'm doing, and I am just, yeah, it's just been a really good summer, and I hope you guys are having a really good summer too. Anyway, the books that I read in June. The first book I have here is that I read King of Wrath by Ana Huang, and why did I say that like that? Ana Huang. Why do I feel like I'm saying that wrong? Please let me know if I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, I read King of Wrath. That's the first in like the interconnected standalone series. I can't remember what the name of the like universe or world is, but anyway, this one follows like Dante and Vivian, and it's an arranged marriage. This is a very like middle of the road romance. This is a little bit on the darker side, but not really comparatively to what's out there, like especially if you want to compare it to like Haunting Adeline. I would say this is not even dark at that point. I will say something that I am going to state in this video, and maybe from the rest of my videos on, just to be super clear, is if I do not say something if I'm not saying it's YA, or I'm not saying it's for a younger audience, then it's not. So you can expect that all of these romance books that are for adults to have adult content, unless I clearly state that it's like closed door romance or clean. You can just assume that it's not. However, I will try to do my best to kind of give you like a range of where these books actually fall on that level of like closed door to like completely open door and very explicit. I will try to be very clear about that from now on. I don't want anyone to go into a book and have some surprises that they're not ready for, especially books that don't have trigger warnings. So I am going to try and do better about that. But anyway, I would say that this book in particular is very like open door. If you don't like that, I wouldn't recommend it. I thought that the book was kind of funny because it was a little bit childish. I liked the way that Vivian kind of ruffled Dante's world up, and not ruffled, but like kind of made it a little bit harder for him to carry on being his grumpy self. However, the book overall was very just like, it's a fun read. It's a really fun, easy read. It's on Kindle Unlimited, but it's kind of just okay. Like, it's nothing overwhelmingly special, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's the first book in the series. I probably would continue reading on with it. It's just not like high on my priority list right now. I think I read that as a palate cleanser. I don't know. June was rough. I was still in a reading slump. I believe Emily Henry's books really pulled me out of that in July, and I was just reading some stuff that like was all over the place. Like I don't know what was going on, and these aren't necessarily, it was like I had no mood to read, but I really wanted to read. I don't know what was going on. Anyway, it's an alright book. It's on Kindle Unlimited if you're looking for something, but like I said, very open door. And then I read God of Malice by Rena Kent. So I was obviously trying to read something that was going to be a page turner, that was going to get me into books again. This is very dark. This will have trigger warnings in it, so if you're interested in reading something like this, just read the trigger warnings. I would have enjoyed this book a lot more if the main male character actually went psycho killer. There's sometimes I find in dark romances where we would actually make the book better if the characters were actually unhinged. And I think this is where there's that problem of like, oh, like you're romanticizing it. It's like, yeah, when it's dark like this, I don't want it to be romantic and loving. I actually want to see the characters act in a way that would be just like awful, because I don't want it to replicate what love is in any way. I feel like it's supposed to be dark for a reason. It's like the villain story. It's not supposed to be like good or have a happily ever after in a way. I don't know. My thoughts with that one were that I personally thought it started off strong and it could have been really good. I just think it would have been way better if he actually was the psychopath that he was saying he was. I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit weird. So yeah, it was fine. If you like dark romance, you'd probably enjoy it. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. It just was okay again. And then in June, I kind of challenged myself to try and finish 3 books. I ended up kind of soft DNFing The Cloisters by Katie Hayes, but I did finish Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola-Estes, and that book I had been reading since like last year, like last October, and I finally finished that in June, so I'm including it in the wrap up because that was an exceptional book to me. That was like 5 stars. I truly enjoyed reading that, but I took my time with it. I only picked it up and read it when I felt called to pick it up and read it, and I feel like there's no other way to really read that book. So yeah, it was really good. As far as nonfiction goes, it was just something so different and exactly what I needed when I was reading it. It was almost weird. And I would recommend actually getting a physical copy of this because, I mean, I know you can annotate on your Kindle, but I guess if you have a Kobo, you can write, I think, on it. Maybe on the Kindle Oasis you can write. I don't know. On my Kindle Paperwhite, you can't like write in the margins. Anyway, I'd recommend a physical copy because then you can kind of write your thoughts and your experiences while you're reading this book. It was exceptional. That's all I'm going to say is if you were looking for something more spiritual, but you want nonfiction, but you don't want like that typical nonfiction that is kind of the same repetitive crap over and over again, I would recommend this, especially if you are a woman. There were also so many parts of this book, like whether it was like folklore, myths, stories passed down through generations, and like culturally significant stories that weirdly enough you can see little bits of them in other fantasy books, like actual fictional actual fictional fantasy books or romantasy, whatever. There is one point where I was like, whoa, that's so weird. Like they talk about that in A Court of Silver Flames. Like they talk about Lady Death in Women Who Run with the Wolves. And that's like a main component of A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. So I don't know. The crossovers between what I learned in this book through like history and the history of telling stories and history amongst like women, and how I feel like I'm just going on a major tangent here, but if you love reading fiction and you would like to pick up maybe something nonfiction, but you are someone like me where you've read a lot of nonfiction and it's kind of just feels like you're being told the same thing over and over, this is the book you need. If you want a book that's nonfiction, I would highly recommend this. I felt like it actually added a whole new layer of appreciation to reading my fictional books too, so that was pretty amazing. And I also read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, so this was also just a really good read. I read this while I was in Italy on my Kindle. Again, Kindle Unlimited. This was a really fun romance. I really did enjoy Elliot and Amma's love story. However, my one thing with this book is Amma is a wedding planner and she like thoroughly doesn't believe in marriage. To me, that is so weird, and some of the things she says and does as far as like showing how she feels towards Elliot, I felt were incredibly misleading and would be so hurtful if it was real. I don't know, they just really bothered me. Whereas like a lot of the things Elliot did for her when she's like not really supposed to know that he did those things were like just so incredibly loving. So it was just, that dynamic was a little bit weird. I didn't really care for the fact that she is literally a wedding planner and does not believe in marriage. You're literally helping people write like the day of that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Like, I'm not even someone who really believes like in marriage necessarily. I don't know, like I do and I don't, but I'm also not a wedding planner. So otherwise the book was really good, really quick read. I thought it was fun, loving, cute. That one is open door, but not too crazy, nothing too explicit, but still open door. And then lastly, as part of that challenge, I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver is just like one of my favorites, if I'm being honest, as far as romance goes. She's a Canadian author. Most of her books are on Kindle Unlimited, and they're just really fun to read. Wild Love was no exception to that. I wouldn't say it's like my number one of hers. I did pre-order the next book, Wild Eyes, and I get to pick it up in Calgary, I'm pretty sure. So I'm very, very excited for that, because I also get to go to Slow Burn Books, which I'm also really excited for. Not the point. But I did really like Wild Love. It just, to me, like, Heartless and Reckless are my favorites from the Chestnut Springs series she wrote, and I'm currently trying to get more into her original interconnected romance series, which is Gold Rush Ranch. Anyway, Wild Love was good. I really liked Rosie and Ford. I really liked their connection. I thought the book was super cute. It just wasn't like anything blow your mind as far as like, it wasn't like middle of the ground or anything like that. It was really good and I really enjoyed reading it, but it wasn't 5-star exceptional. I would read it again necessarily. Again, very open door romance, just to be clear. I think in this one you could skip those though, like, whereas I think if you skipped over the like open door scenes in King of Wrath or in God of Malice, like you don't really have much of a book left. Whereas if you skip over them in Wild Love, like there's still a lot to the story, which I appreciate. I do tend to like that more. I like when there's more of a story than there is. I like spice or smut or whatever you want to call it, but it's still there. So just something to be aware of. And this was also my first book bucket list item. Hadn't had one of those in any of the books in a while, so I was pretty excited. This one was pretty simple. I will be putting them up on the screen, but it was just basically sitting on a dock watching the sunset, or sitting on the dock watching the sunrise over like a body of water, any body of water, I don't care. Just sit on the dock, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. I just thought that would be magical, and I have never done that, so I would love to do that. So that was June. So that was, how many books was that? 1, 2, 5 books in June. I am still on track towards my reading goal, I think. Yeah, I am. I'm not really too worried about it, but I checked that before I sat down to do this, and I am on track, so that's cool. We'll see how that goes once I travel for like almost a month. That for me, that potentially goes one of two ways. Either I'm reading like a ton or I don't really read very much. So we'll see how August and September go, just because it kind of falls over both months. Anyway, July. In July, I finished part 1 of the A Court of Mist and Fury graphic audio, which is just like the full character cast of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas voice acting out the book, which was, if you follow me on like Goodreads or anything, you would see me update these things, and I have said this before, but it is like rereading the books, but for the first time, and it is an exceptional way to reread the books. I am loving it, but I'm also kind of just taking my time with it because I really love this series and I'm really enjoying it, and I just don't want to rush it this time, and it's just really fun to listen to it. As I'm recording this, I have actually finished, it's August, but I finished listening to part 2 as well, and it was so good. That book is so good on audio. Anyway, I'm not gonna get too excited, but my favorite book is A Court of War and Ruin, and that is the next one, so I am very, very excited to continue listening to these. Probably a really good thing for like flying all the way over to Canada. That'll be a long flight, so that'll be perfect. And yeah, so anyway, I finished in July the first part, and it was really good. Like, I really enjoyed the first part, and if you have read the books, I think you would enjoy the experience of listening to the audiobooks, especially if you're someone who can get them for free on Spotify. And then I read a bit of a disappointment. I actually read more than just like Emily Henry. I don't know how I didn't realize that. But anyway, I read Marrow. This is by Trisha Wolfe and Brynne Weaver. I think she's known for Butcher and Blackbird. This was interesting. This is also dark romance. I would say this is very explicit, but I probably should have DNF'd this book. I do not recommend it. It was pretty boring, especially after reading the Mindfuck series in July by S.T. Heavy. I think that pen name is so funny, but also rest in peace. Your novellas were amazing. I truly enjoyed reading the Mindfuck series. It was exceptional. Marrow, on the other hand, couldn't care less. I shouldn't have finished it. It was so choppy. I don't know if it was because it was written by two people, but it was just so bad, especially after reading the Mindfuck series. So if you're wondering what to choose between the two, because they're essentially very similar storylines, I would choose, well, they're not really similar, but they have like the same kind of vibe and feeling. However, the Mindfuck series does a way better job, and it was just a way more fun read. It definitely reads like you're reading a really intense Criminal Minds episode that is like just wild. Definitely check your trigger warnings for both of them if you are considering picking up either, especially for the Mindfuck series. I found that was quite dark, and I don't mean like in the romantic section of things, just the overall story with it being like kind of a, like, not true crime, but like a crime story. It's dark, just like an episode of Criminal Minds would be. It is dark. So just be prepared for that if you do consider picking it up. But it was really, really good. I think I ended up giving that whole series either 4 or 5 stars just because I was like hooked. The first book, well, they're kind of novellas. If you put them all together, I would say it makes a book. There's 5 novellas, and the first one is a little bit slow, a little bit like, I'm not sure, but the rest just pick up and it gets better and better as you read that, and they are really quick and easy reads, so I mean, why not? Also on Kindle Unlimited. This is not sponsored by Kindle. I just happened to be in a really bad reading slump, so I was just kind of picking up as many free books as I possibly could, and then I ended up reading all of Emily Henry's books. So I just realized that I've been rambling on about all these books and I have not given you guys a hint of what any of them are about. I don't know how I managed to gloss over what all of them are about. My brain just kind of shut off that part of this wrap up. I will try to quickly sum them up at the end here. But lastly, I read all of Emily Henry's most popular books in July. I read A Happy Place last year, but I ended up reading Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation, Book Lovers, and Funny Story. I did a whole vlog on that, so I'm not really going to get into it. However, out of the 4, I would highly recommend Book Lovers. These are open door romances, but I would say they're a little more clean than like your average one. However, again, they are all open door. For Beach Read, I did have a book bucket list item. Beach Read was kind of like my midpoint of the books that I rated out of on the scale. But like I said, if you want to know how I felt about these books, there's a whole video on it. But I do want to try to go to a drive-in movie. I've never done that, and I thought that was cool that they did that in the book. And then also Dancing in the Rain, they brought that up, and I've always wanted to do that. I think that would be fun. I've just never really, done it. And then People We Meet on Vacation. I did not like this book. However, there is a part where they talk about how they are going on a hike in the mist-ridden redwoods. I would love to do that. I think it would be so peaceful and incredible and just a really wonderful human experience. So that is definitely going on my book bucket list, even though I didn't really like the book. And then lastly, my final book bucket list items was from Book Lovers, and that is to visit somewhere that is the setting of a book. So that's kind of what ends up happening in Book Lovers is the main female character and her sister go to a town that is the setting of a book that the main female character is the agent for the author of. Hopefully that makes sense. Essentially, that book bucket list item is to visit somewhere, go somewhere that is the setting of a book. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see where that ends up being. I'm not going to pick a place. I'm just going to see if one comes up that seems like the perfect opportunity. Back through the books and what they are actually about. So in June, well, I kind of mentioned in June what King of Wrath is about. It's an arranged marriage. That's all you really need to know. Two people who don't really like each other, so enemies to lovers style arranged marriage. Her dad sucks. That's all you really need to know. Then we have God of Malice. This is, I honestly don't even remember what this is about, so that's probably why I didn't really tell you guys. I just know that the main male character is nuts, and he is kind of trying to like ruin the female main character's life, but it is interesting the tie-in with like the main female character, her friend that she loses. I did actually really like that storyline, and I thought the book could have been so good, so it bothers me that like they didn't do more with the storylines that were happening in that book, so I don't really recommend it anyway. I don't know. Forget Me Not. So this is basically two people who were kind of dating, and like I said, Amma doesn't believe in marriage, so when Elliot wants to take things further, they ultimately break up, but then they are forced to work together at a wedding because he is the florist for the wedding and she is the wedding planner, and that's how that book unfolds after that. I won't give anything else away, but yeah, it's really fun. It's a good book. I enjoyed the characters in that book a lot. And then you have Wild Love. This is a like surprise single dad, billionaire man who returns to a small town and is trying to open up his like recording studio space. He's actually Willa's brother. If you have read Chestnut Springs, this is Ford, as in like Willa from Heartless. It's her brother. So I did like that aspect because Willa is in this book. And then you also have Rosie. She returns home and she starts working for him. And it's kind of one of those situations where it's brother's best friend or brother's like sibling or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, essentially there are a lot of tropes in this. The storyline, especially with the daughter who kind of comes into the picture, I think she's like 11 or 12 in the book. That was really lovely. I really did enjoy the family dynamics of this book and the storyline there. I thought that was really heartwarming actually. It's basically just Ford and Rosie working together and how that all unfolds, since they obviously have underlying feelings for each other. That's how all romantic comedies work. But I did really like the family storyline. This isn't a spoiler, it happens in like the first few chapters. The daughter shows up because she needs help. So that's kind of some idea, but it's very heartwarming and I did enjoy that, and I think other people would enjoy that too. I normally don't enjoy like the single dad trope or the single mom trope, but I feel like Elsie can write any trope that I don't like, and I'm probably gonna like it if she writes it. So that was really good. If you don't know what A Court of Mist and Fury is about, you're unfortunately going to have to read ACOTAR first. I'm not gonna spoil this book because honestly talking about it would essentially spoil everything about this series, and you kind of just have to go through it yourself. So if you're interested in it, listen to, read, whatever you want to do, start with ACOTAR. And then Marrow, I'm not going to get into what that's about. I think it essentially was two different killers who are, there's some twists, but they're like very mediocre, but it's two different killers on the same like hunting ground, and they're like trying to decide who deserves to stay in a way. But it's very like, doesn't really follow that storyline. I don't know. It's very okay. Mindfuck series, like I said, is like an episode of Criminal Minds. It's basically the female main character, Lana, is trying to go on a vengeful, I don't even know what you want to call it, but she's basically on a complete massacre for a group of people who did her extremely wrong. And so these books are very satisfying in terms of seeing what happens as far as what Lana is able to accomplish in terms of what happened to her in the past. And she actually is a psycho killer. So it's actually there, like it's real. And I think the way the books wrap up makes it really good too. But yeah, she's, this isn't like some fluffy little love story. This is pretty intense, so if you're not really into that, I would not really recommend reading it. But yeah, she essentially is trying to go after all the people who hurt her and wronged her, and these are not minor hurts and minor wrongs. These people, in my mind, definitely deserve what they get. Anyway, it was so good to read. I I would watch it if it was a movie or like a TV show. It'd be pretty cool. Basically kind of is already in terms of like all the Criminal Minds, Special Victims Unit, all those fun shows. If you like those, I like them. They're good, except for sometimes they can be a little too much. I can't watch them like a lot. And then we have the Emily Henry books, which I did a full vlog on, and if you haven't watched that, you should watch it because I give you kind of more of live reactions, I guess. I don't know, more in the moment thoughts on what's happening in the books and a more overall review of what those books are about and how I would rank them and which ones I recommend and which ones I don't. But yeah, so this is longer than I thought it would be because I kind of forgot to tell you guys what the books were about. But that was my June and July, and I hope you guys had a really good summer full of really good books. And if you had a favorite in June or July, let me know what it was and if you have any books you'd recommend to me to read before summer ends. I hope you guys are having a great summer, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!